anymore. And we had some good bridges at that particular level. But that one bridge in Devil's Lake did not have any damage on it at that particular level. So we will move to the bridge. I will have another handout sheet here you can have, because I will talk about what's in it at that particular level. By the way, your meeting announcements, the first one and the second ones were very nice pictures that you have of the bridge as it is today. And this will have another picture of the bridge with the train on it. And this picture on this one will also be before the dam in the Prairie du Sac was closed at that particular level. But the first bridge was built during the winter of 1871. It was a wood shack, shanty type of shabby wood trestle bridge. You drove piles down through the ice and the like. But in those early days of when you pioneered railroads, you did everything in a quick fashion because you knew in 5 or 6 years you're going to be redoing it anyhow in that respect. But they wanted to get the lines in and get the type of land established at that point. So the wood piles were driven in during the winter of 1871, which enabled then for the track to be completed into Baraboo and the first train coming in there at that particular level. The building of the track into Baraboo, going through Devil's Lake, they moved more yardage of stuff in the Devil's Lake confines of the park than what they did all the rest of the way from Madison to Devil's Lake. So they had to move more yards of stuff in order to get the lines through there at that particular level. So 1871 was the first bridge, but not the one that is presently out here that we're looking at. This iron bridge here was in 1878. It was when the iron trestle bridge was built, and it was placed on stone piers and operated from that particular aspect. In 1897, of course, that was a single track that they put across it at that time. These piers were, there was 20 piers, and they were after the dam was built, there was 10 to 40 foot of water on the piers. I'm sure there's some sediment down there now, but the pier water depths ranged from 10 to 40 feet. And so there was a lot of pier damage, potential damage out there, but we are fortunate that with the dam, there's not a fast flowing stream of water, and the piers have held up very, very good. And we'll get a little bit into what we need to do for repairs of those at that particular level. But they've held up very good and a very solid structure at that particular level. When they put the double track in, why at that time, what do you do with a single track bridge of that length in the middle of a whole bunch of double track? Well, in order to handle that, they put what they called a gauntlet track in. A gauntlet track, there was actually 4 different rails going across that bridge. And consider that, let me put papers out here, that these were your track, well, these 2 tracks here, and then they built a track inside like here. So that this is one track and this is another set of tracks. So that when the 2 tracks came together, you funneled down to the one set of tracks and you moved with one rail being solid all the way. So you did not have to have a switch on that single rail, so they could gauntlet the train onto the single track, move it across the bridge, and go from that particular aspect. At that particular time, and maybe some of you remember, there was a control tower on the Merrimac side here, on the bank here, by the bridge. Anybody here that maybe remember that? I can remember of it being tore down. Not as far as operation, but there was a control shack. So the control shack decided which train north or south was going to go, but they'd wait on their double track on either the north or south side while the other train came through, but they would not have to throw any switches to bring that train across because of the 4 different rails on that particular bridge. So that was the way the bridge was built to handle that type of area. If you pick up one of these about the bridge, you'll find out of the spans, there's all types of lengths. There's actually, they run from 40 feet to 201 feet. So it's an interesting type of construction. That's the reason when you look at it, why nothing looks the same, and they aren't. Practically everything is different on the bridge that they have today. So when we get done, why, you're going to have to get used to the same old humdrum of every span, basically looking alike, except they'll be a little longer in length. But it gives you the length of the spans here and what they are at that particular aspect, which I think you'll find very interesting. So on the bridge, by 1905, they did pour concrete around some of the piers. Not that they were that particularly damaged, but they did pour some concrete. And there are a couple, 3 piers that are going to get a little repair as we go along right now, but that's not going to be too big of a factor at that particular level. But the control tower, I got the date here, 1924 was when the tower no longer was used. So probably none of you remember it being used, but it stayed there for quite a few years as a landmark at that particular level.
Do you remember when they tore it down, what year it was?
I don't know when they tore it down, no. And I'm sure we could get that from Mid-States Archives operation in Baraboo with the Regal Archives, because they've got all the Chicago Northwestern records are there. They have all those in the archives 100%. All the blueprints and that type of thing. So it could be picked up. So what do we expect? That's what you came for tonight, right? You want to know what can we expect? What's going to happen? Well, right now that all the engineering is being done and things are being prepared to take and be able to take and let bids so that we can get this repair underway. You're not going to see much happening this year out on the bridge that you're going to identify, except for probably midsummer to late summer. There'll be one span replaced. Span number 2, coming from the south. Span number 2 is in bad shape. Right now, because of the condition of that span, why, we can only bring in the 268 weight cars and not 286 cars, so that we cannot fill up the cars that are built for 286. We cannot fill them full and bring them across the bridge. The Federal Transportation Board has told us that we can use that bridge this year, 2017, but if nothing is done on that span section in 2017, why, then we'll have to go to a lower weight yet, below the 268, which would really create some chipping problems. By going to the 268 right now, the industries that will use this rail line, it will cost them probably an extra $250,000 in shipping cost. One of the units that will be taking a fair amount of hit, you might say, on it, is the grain out of Rock Springs. There's a tremendous amount of grain comes out of Rock Springs. In fact, there's at least one train of 25 car units per week. Some weeks they've shipped 2. But one train per week is their minimum that they intend to ship. The United Cooperative actually owns their rolling stocks. The grain that they ship is in their own rail cars, and they have went to the 286 cars. They've got all 286 cars, so they cannot load them to the full capacity that they're intended to be loaded. So as they load them, they have to cut back about 10-12% on the amount of tonnage that they put into the car. So that span number 2, mid-late summer, will be taken out, replaced entirely, so that we meet that criteria so that we can go from that particular level. Then 2018-19 will be the full push to finish the rest of the spans. We can't really get too much activity going this year as far as the Department of Transportation is concerned, because the Spring Green Bridge, which is a rather small bridge, just north of Highway 14 where you cross the Wisconsin River there, that 7-span bridge will be replaced this year. So they're engineers that deal with this type of thing like are going to be tied up at that particular Spring Green Bridge. But they will finish in time so we can take and get this span number 2 taken care of and go from that aspect. So 2019, 18, 19, that's when we expect to be into the replacement at that point. We will take those. We will not interrupt the rail service. We will interrupt the timing of the rail service, but it will be scheduled so that the rail lines will remain open and they'll be able to get their service at that particular level. So that is terribly important from that particular level. The ways it will be done, it will not be a big impact environmentally as far as the DNR can see, because most of this will be done off of barges and the like, and we're not moving dirt, whatever, moving steel, and so naturally there is some concern of moving the old steel and the like, but they will be operating off of barges. So you as a user of Lake Wisconsin, it does mean that you will need to be a little cautious in your boating, particularly in the wintertime. We aren't going to be on the ice, so it won't bother your snowmobiling as much. But in the summertime, you're boating, and Dave, you may have to find someplace else to lose your lures, that type of thing that you lost on the piers. But it will be restricted a little bit as to where you can traverse through. But when it gets done, it'll be a similar looking bridge all the way across. There will not be a low span anymore, so you will not have to avoid that low span. All spans will be clear, so you can move there, maybe not your sailboat through, but you can move everything else through underneath of the spans as it's set up. So we have a lot to be done. Right now, there'll still be 5 mile per hour train. We realize that 5 mile per hour train going across the bridge impacts a little bit of your traffic here in town as you go across the railroad crossing when that train comes through. But to go 5 miles per hour off the train, you got to remember that the lead part of that train has to be got down to 5 miles per hour when it hits and cannot speed up until the tail gets off of the bridge. And so you have used up quite a little bit of distance when you've got 30 and 40 cars that are the normal pull through here. You've got quite a little bit of distance that you have involved. But when the bridge is completed, the whole set of line from Madison to Reedsburg will be such that we can operate 25 miles per hour the whole distance. So we will cut down the time that you will be waiting at the crosswalks and whatever at that particular time also. So we're looking forward to it. We think it's going to be great. We know it's going to be exciting. And I've used up about half of the time I've allowed it, so I'll let it open for questions. I think maybe some of you got questions, and we're happy to cover any rail questions that you have. I do a lot of reading or whatever, and I have a rail magazine by my chair that I do a little reading in most every night, and I get 2 daily newspapers by internet, so I try to keep up on what's happening on railroad business. So fire questions of anything that you might have. Yes?
Could you talk a little bit about when the bridge was a swing bridge?
Yeah, that when it was built in as the Iron Trestle in 1970 or 1878, I shortly thereafter they decided that the steamships were going to be able to come up through and the like, and so they put a swing bridge in there. And actually, as we redo it, why the swing bridge will not go in. That hardly ever opened begin with. It was very seldom used at that particular level. Most of the boats that came through before the dam were able to go through under the height that was available. But the swing bridge was used primarily if a steamboat came up through. In that traversing of the waterway, one thing of kind of interest that you might have is for your Lake Wisconsin. At one time, a party of boater decided that he was going to take and prove that he could get from Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, to Chicago, Illinois by water with the same one boat all the way. He came up through here, and maybe they had to open that bridge at that time, I don't know, but he came up to Wisconsin to Portage, took the canal over to the Fox River to Green Bay, took the Lake Michigan down to Chicago. So he made the trip from Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin to Chicago, Illinois by traveling in one boat trip. So probably can't do it today, but he could do it at that time.
Virgil, do you know where the $17 million funding for the bridge reconstruction repairs, is it partially funded through Wisconsin and Southern, who is the primary user, or fully through them? Does DOT have some money in the game? I was just curious.
Yeah, this is a very, very appropriate question. And the money is there. The money is set in the bank account right now at that particular level. So we're very fortunate in that respect. The 80% of this type of construction falls on the state to fund. The state of Wisconsin, in this particular situation, has the FRAP money. And what the heck is FRAP? Federal Railroad Preservation Program is what it is. And so we call it FRAP. We put an A in between the R and P's. But that money has been allotted to the states in a grant type of situation. And they can be used for any freight rail type of improvement. Not passenger rail, but freight rail. And so it fits into that category. This money has been there, and it was earmarked for one other project which did not go through. So therefore this has been reserved for the use of this Merrimac Bridge. So the funding is there. That's 80%. The 20% comes out of the budget of Wisconsin Southern. So they are responsible for 20% of that particular amount of money. And because this is going over 2-3 years, budget years, why they're able to fit that into their budget quite ably at that particular level. But I would say that to me means that Wisconsin Southern looks at this as a very vital part of their operation if they're willing to put $3.5 million into a bridge here at Merrimac so that you people can get your boats through. Dave,
what impact will it have on the town as workers come and go? Will they be eating here, or what's your experience with that kind of impact, not just actually working on the railroad, but kind of a secondary?
Well, it will.
benefit?
It certainly will have some impact on the town. I'm sure of that. How much I cannot tell you. There's not been a rail bridge in Wisconsin of this magnitude attempted to be done. So, in fact, the one at Spring Green will be the second biggest rail bridge built in Wisconsin after this one gets done. Right now, it is the largest project, rail bridge. I'm talking about bridges. There's lots of bridges along the way of this. Last year, Wisconsin Southern, out of their own budget, they repaired 7 of these smaller bridges. And I'm saying smaller bridges, like over Moon Valley over here. That's not necessarily a small bridge, but they repaired 7 of them. They've got 8 of them in their budget for this year. Of the 38 miles from Johnson Street out to Reedsburg. So 7 were done last year, 8 to be done of the minor bridges this particular year also. So they are very, very enticed to keep bridges up. And it's not fun to have rails, trains drop off rails or whatever, but they are very good about keeping the tracks inspected. They run over this bridge, they run over that at least once a day to check it. But 4 times a year it is ultrasound. Rail tracks are ultrasound today. And an ultrasound going down the rail track, and they move rather rapidly, but going down the rail track, they can pick up a fissure 1/8 of an inch long down in the center of the track. It doesn't have to show on the surface. It could be inside the track, and they pick up 1/8 of an inch. And if it's 1/4 of an inch, then it's time to do something. The good thing about the bridge is, and that's the reason we've been able to use it sufficiently over these years, they have never found a fissure on the bridge. Have never. Which means that the piers are solid. If they were not solid, they would be giving enough that they would cause some cracks in the rail and the like, but they have not picked up a fissure at that level. So that gives us something to build with at that level.
And so they're gonna use the existing piers?
The existing piers will be used,
Are
yes.
they gonna pour concrete around them?
There are a few of them will be reinforced, but most of them are going to be just as they are right now.
Yeah, it's gonna be a steel bridge, not stressed out.
And be a steel bridge, all steel bridge, yes, yeah. You did have a question up here, I believe I missed.
What's the clearance gonna be under the bridge?
I'm not quite sure what the clearance is. It's, well, you can take the span on this end where the higher clearance is. That'll be basically the profile that you'll have. But what that distance is, I can't tell you. So keep the water level down, it'll be a lot greater than what it'll be otherwise.
What color are they gonna be?
Rainbow.
Is there any story about the cars or the parts of cars that you see embedded on the south side of the railroad bridge?
You mean down Sauk?
No, on this railroad bridge on the south end,
Oh.
you can see cars that are,
Automobiles.
automobiles that are
Frames
buried
of
on the rail
automobiles.
cars.
Oh,
Old automobiles.
I don't know.
I think they were just dumped there probably in the 1920s and 30s. They're old scrap cars someone pushed over the edge.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for people to dump stuff along the roadway. In fact, there's the line down at Sauk City is being prepared to Sauk City, is being prepared for the bicycle trail. That's one of the big things they have today is the junk that they have to move to get those lines cleared so they can put a bicycle trail in. There is a lot of junk along there at that particular level.
And a little different question on the bicycle trail they're putting in. Are they gonna replace the bridge across the Wisconsin River on south of Sauk City?
That is something that committee has to decide
So they,
and find the funding for.
yeah.
That bridge basically is no longer part of the rail system. From south of the bridge on into Mazomanie, it is a rail system, but that has been rail banked over to the bicycle trail operation. And the Wisconsin River Rail Transit Commission that operates on that line down there has commission responsibilities, and actually they have the responsibility here because when Union Pacific was sold to the state, the Pink Lady did not pick up the insurance and the like because it was so much better to transport it together to the Wisconsin River Rail Transit Commission that has all the policies and like. So the physical part of it is there. The Pink Lady operates as a public relations type of operation with the shippers and you, the public, in that type of area. But back to the bridge, something's going to need to be done with that. And that is under study right now.
That bridge, it's one of the piers moved or something back in the 50s.
Well, it's not as old a bridge, but down there you've got floodwaters and high waters, and there's a lot of erosion around those piers, a whole lot of erosion. And at the time that one section was blasted out, the pier that was left, I thought it was solid, but like today, why it's not so good. In fact, if you talk to the Department of Transportation, Rails and Harbor Division, and the chief engineer of the Harbor Division was asked the question, well, how would you describe the bridge down there? What's the situation? He says, well, I'll use a definite engineering term. It's kittywampus. And if you get down to Sauk City and want to drive down and look at it from the bank, you can see that it's more than kittywampus. It's in pretty bad shape and twist. And so this summer, there is going to have to be something done there, basically removal of the steel structure and maybe of the piers. We are trying to work, shouldn't say we, because I'm not part of the Wisconsin River Rail. Wisconsin River Rail is trying to work with the DNR to leave the piers in there so that you fishermen can go down and we can put the fish trap around the pier around it, so it'd be fishing area. And trying to get the possibility of dropping those down into the water and just leaving there and build them as a fish area.
I have just a quick question, kind of going back to the the ownership of the bridge and the rail lines is state-owned, basically.
Yes.
And they're investing a lot in this bridge. Do you know that, obviously the ship has sailed, all the decisions have been made. Has there been any discussion by the DOT or coordination with the DOT about the potential of adding a single lane car passageway on the bridge, if something like that were feasible or could be feasible or could be examined? Where they could set it up where there's a stop and go light on each end where it allows traffic to flow one way for a minute and then the other way for a minute or 2 minutes or whatever they determine. Has that ever been even considered?
Not that I know of. I don't think so. As you look at the highway trail bypass going down through Sauk, I've discussed that situation with the DOT at the time that we, before the Badger ordinance closed and the track was taken out, of how about putting in, when that bypass goes south of Sauk City someday, how about putting in a bridge there with trail, bicycle trail, or train tracks and 4 lanes of highway. And there's no interest in that type of thing. Even down there where it looked like a logical situation, where it was going to be completely rebuilt. So no, nothing's been discussed that I know of, yes.
I might have missed what you told at the beginning. The piers, existing piers, are these the original piers from, and are they granite block and do they go down to bedrock or?
The original piers put in were strictly wood piers, driven piers at that particular level. In later years, why they put these stone walls around them. These so they're cut rock is the way they call them. They call them cut rock.
Is it granite?
And no, it's not granite. No, but it's cut rock. And like I say, because it's with the Prairie du Sac Dam, that's really saved the rock here. The water level here at Merrimac, the water level of what now is Lake Wisconsin, rose 22 feet when they put the dam in down at Sauk City. So you got that much more water than what you used to have.
The other thing that
Are
helps
they sitting on bedrock?
Yes,
Go ahead.
yes.
How long has the bridge been here?
The bridge was built, I'll have to look back myself. The first bridge was built in 1871, which is even older than I am. The steel bridge was built in 1878. So that's what, 107, yeah, 160 years. I don't know if that's on this. Let me see if this is on here. And no, we don't have that on. But the bridge in length, the whole bridge is 1,718 feet long. Here, you need these 2 sheets here so you can take them and help out with your students in the class there. Take that back with you. Yes.
Virgil, could you explain how that swing bridge operated? I've fished underneath that and I can't figure out, how did they ever get that to move?
Well, the present span that's there, they won't move. Because the swing bridge was basically all the mechanism that was taken out. Once the dam was put in and they knew the swing bridge wasn't going to be there, to enable the tracks to be better laid and they make a more stable operation, that swing bridge is actually taken out.
So the gears that are in there, what are they?
No, I don't know where they're at. They might be down, that might be what Dave's catching his lures on. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you talked about obviously the upgrading of the bridge itself, which is going to allow heavier weighted trains, and the train is going to be able to go faster, up to 25 miles an hour is what you were saying.
Yeah.
What is in the plan for the number of trains then that will be going through Merrimac with this upgrade and the length of the trains? Will those also increase in length as well? And then the other part too is with the heavier train itself, train cars, has there been any types of information brought about that these heavier weighted cars do something. Obviously, they're pushing through more wind, they're pushing through more land, they're pushing onto the land. So I'd like some information on that in regard to vibrations and noise.
I can't give you a definitive answer on that. I haven't studied that too closely at that point. As you go to the heavier weighted cars, you have to increase your ballast and keep putting more ballast in. Ballast is what really gives you the sponginess for that vibration that you're talking about. The better your ballast, the less vibration you're going to have. And just as ballast, sometimes it depends on the topography, the land. If you're going through a swamp area, you're going to have different ballast, a different operation. In city of Baraboo last year, the industrial park tracks were all placed at $1 million cost. And those tracks along the north end of the Cisco there, we've had a lot of problems of them settling and because the frost never goes out right, and there was water, etc. That area, and part of that $1 million was to put in drain underneath of it. Then you put in a special under ballast type of area. Then you put a plastic cap over it, and then motor ballast on top. So there's lots of ways that different things at different areas. So every different mile in the track could be treated entirely different. But it is important and concerned because the rail operation cannot have that vibration either. That's the reason you go to 5 miles an hour on the bridge, so you don't cause that vibration type situation. But the less vibration you have, the better off you are. The air movement that you would see from the aerodynamics are terribly important because if you push an air, you can't pull tons. So you don't push air. Whenever possible, you prevent pushing air. So you take and try and keep from pushing air and causing the air ripples that you are concerned about. But beyond that, I'm not enough of an expert to tell you that's what it is. In the western area, main line areas, and otherwise, you're seeing today, in fact, Burlington Northern just moved a 2-mile train into Chicago, which is unusual. But you're seeing that if you get out on western tracks and open tracks, you'll see these trains 2.5 miles long today. Big, long trains. So a big factor, the electronics, being able to view these cars as they go through places to keep track of them and see if the axles are working is important. But actually 210 cars is what they were restricted to for a while because the counter that counted them and elect was only geared to go up to 999,000 when it counted through the axles and seeing that they inspected all the axles. So now they've got their electronic counters so they can count over 1,000 axles. So now they're up to 2.5 miles of cars. And those type of trains will have engines in the middle of it, but they're all controlled by the engineer at the front.
Will that be coming through here?
I would certainly like to think so, but no.
And then the other part is the number of times. I mean, is there a plan to increase the number of trains?
I don't believe there would be. The operation at the 25 miles an hour gives the train crew ample time to come up, make some major switching and back. Remember I said we do have a switch engine in Rock Springs and a crew house there, and we have a trackmobile, as it's called, in Baraboo, which can be run on the roadway and the rail tracks because it's got big rubber tires on it. They could be used for on-demand type of switching. So I would doubt that there would be more than one train per day for efficiency. The bigger the train, of course, the more efficiency you have. And we are looking at, in this area, figuring 45 cars as the norm and be on a regular daily basis. But then they'll be dropped at Baraboo and they'll be switched a day or two later, and that would be all right too. So, but I don't think you'll find that it will be that the big of an increase in it. When you get the happen to get the grains, and they do have 30 freight cars and 25 grain cars are up to 55. So there could be some over that, but not that many times. Sir?
You mentioned, improving the bridge. What about the tracks, that go through town? With all the vibration and noise and everything that's going on now, are they gonna also improve the tracks to minimize this vibration and earthquake type stuff for the
Yeah.
residents?
Yes, that's, Maintenance of Way handles that, of course, for Wisconsin Southern, their roads. And there is continually every year ties being replaced as need, and then sometimes total replacement as they see fit. But for this year, there's 7,400 ties setting, ready to be put in the 38 miles as the weather permits at that particular level. So sometime in 2017, there'll be those 7,400 ties placed in that line along the way. Some of that new ties will be on the bridges that they're working on. They'll take and restructure all of those. But they average about 6,500 ties a year on that section. So if you see a bad tie that isn't picked up by, we'd like to know about it, they like to know about it, because we want to replace those ties. If the spike's no longer staying in, forking up, it's getting time to consider replacing ties, because when the spikes loosen up, that's when your tracks start vibrating. And when the tracks start vibrating, you can do all types of things too. That's not good, including increasing the wear on the track rail.
And also, maybe as a follow-up question, environmental concerns, moving through the Merrimac Reserve, Devil's Lake area, the Virgil Range area. What do the environmentalists have to say about the trains?
I have not heard,